Welcome to VPG's Virtual Water Cooler Chat podcast, a platform that features professionals across a variety of industries and promotes growth mindset principles with a central pillar of championing the achievements of women. Our conversations explore a wide spectrum of backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives, creating a vibrant mosaic that enriches our collective understanding and strengthens our commitment to growth and empowerment. In this episode of Virtual Water Cooler Chat, Ashley is speaking with Molly Kocialski of Counsel at Holland Hart LLP. Molly's experience spans IP boutique firms, in-house counsel roles at major technology, telecommunications, and financial services corporations, and senior executive leadership at the USPTO. As director of the USPTO's Rocky Mountain Regional Outreach Office for nearly 10 years, Molly led strategic initiatives across 9 states overseeing 200-plus employees, and her in-house experience at Oracle, Quest Communications, and First Data Corporation shaped her understanding of managing mission-critical IP assets. Let's get started.
Molly, how are you doing?
I am wonderful, Ashley. It's so good to see you.
Well, I know you're wonderful. That's why you're on the podcast.
One of the things that I've always loved about the IP system is it's all about ideas and inventions and brands and those kinds of things. And it's really done without reference to anything. You know, any brain that wants to invent hopefully has access to invent, and we just care about the ideas. And so I think back to like some of those early women who patented, even when women couldn't own property. So They didn't actually own the patent that they eventually ended up getting, like Mary Keyes for the woven basket hats. She never actually owned it. She had to assign it to somebody else because women couldn't own property then. Women were able to get credit cards in my lifetime. I remember my cousin is a chemical engineer. She's still working. And when she went to buy her house, her father had to sign the deed with her. And that was not that long ago.
So annoying.
I was going to say, we were talking before the recording about how old I actually am, which maybe we won't put out on the podcast. But right, like just to think about all of the changes that have happened for women socially, politically, everything else like that over the course of my lifetime is pretty fascinating. And then I think back to like, you know, what my mother experienced and what my grandmother experienced. It's kind of cool. But I really do love the IP space because it always has been a place where women can shine.
Well, you know, I'm actually Chinese American. My grandmother is no longer alive, but was one of the women that actually had her feet banned. Talk about controlling mobility. And
Right.
used to like, how do you even walk?
Without pain.
Yeah, only pain. I'm like, oh God, I feel so bad. And then it's like the feet were like so deformed. And I'm just I'm grateful for those women for all the things that they have done so that we could put our best foot forward. No pun intended.
You know what? I am right there with you. And I think, again, and maybe it is a philosophy of mine that I do try to leave people in places better than when I found them. I do think that that is something, but I was telling a group of young women at a law school event recently, and I just said, you know what? The best part about the intellectual property system, number one, again, it's all about the ideas, and I love the ideas. But literally, I can look at all of my son's aunties, and that most of them, and I say the majority of them, are female patent attorneys.
Ooh.
So not only is it a place where I have found like my calling and my passion, but it is a place where I have found some of the most deep and rich and wonderful relationships that I've had with women, because everybody in our system is so smart. You know, they bring you up, right? Like you get to talk about real things and you get to talk about exciting technology and all of those things. So you're just surrounded by really smart and amazing people. And I love that. And like I said, literally, almost every woman that my son calls auntie is either an attorney I worked with at a corporation or literally a patent attorney. It's just so funny. I sometimes think like he's like, I have too many aunties.
How old is your son?
My son is now 16. He's a junior in high school, and we are doing college visit for spring break in a couple of weeks. I will tell you, I truly have a mental block about this. But the other day he was like, Mom, what are you going to do when I'm not home anymore? And I'm like, well, I do think that joining Holland and Hart when I did is a good thing, because H&H will definitely keep me busy.
Yes.
He was like, what if, I went in state and I stayed at home for a while? And I was like, you know what? Then I didn't do my job. The job of every parent is to raise a child that leaves you. That's one of the things that makes it the hardest part of being a parent. And I'm like, and if you don't leave me, then I feel like I haven't done my job, because you need to go. You need to go have your own life and walk your own journey. And plus, you're distracted. No.
I gotta get that billable in,
I know.
Well, thank you for that, the preview of what we're going to talk about today. We are going to be focusing on the theme of play to your strength. So I'm going to first ask you about how you started your career in IP, or do you know any people in IP in your surroundings? And if not, how did you get yourself into this system?
There were a couple parallel threads that came through. So my uncle on my mom's side, Ron Kocialski, is a patent attorney, but he didn't become a patent attorney until later in life. He was a mechanical engineer. He was already a patent attorney by the time I was in law school and had made the decision to go to law school. But most of the people in my family are engineers. My dad's an electrical engineer. One of my cousins is a chemical engineer. My uncle was the mechanical engineer, and another cousin is a computer science / engineer. I've got another cousin, large Polish family. I have another cousin.
You have a huge family.
Who, architecture, just kind of that spatial and logical and all of that has been a theme that has run through our family. But, really never considered law school until I actually started working as a chemical engineer. And I needed more. I enjoyed the technology, but I didn't enjoy the pace. And so I was like, I want a faster pace. I want more exposure to different technologies too. But originally, I thought I was going to go to school to be an environmental lawyer. For those who know me on your podcast, Ray, this is kind of a funny statement because I never wanted to work for the federal government. So, and in order to be a really good environmental lawyer, you have to work for the Environmental Protection Agency at some point, or at least you did back when I was making decisions. And I'm like, I don't want to live in DC. I don't want to live in DC, and I don't want to work for the federal government. So I was like, what else can I do with an engineering degree and a law degree? Because now that I've gotten both of these, my father especially is going to expect me to be employed. So I need to do
minor details.
But Dad was not going to keep me on the payroll forever. So
I love that.
Kind of a do or die situation there. And I was like, what else can I do? And so I took my first intellectual property class and just kind of, and I know it sounds strange to phrase it this way, but I just kind of fell in love. And then while I was working as an engineer, so again, there's that parallel track, I had the experience of one of the older gentlemen engineers in my group received a patent, and he was a very taciturn man. He was very stoic, did not say a whole lot. I'm pretty sure he thought I was flighty and just didn't have a whole lot of use for me. The one day we were the only two in the trailer, and he got like the actual ribboned patent. And so I said, well, what did you get a patent on? And I watched this really stoic, taciturn man turn into a butterfly, honestly. And I was like, okay, there's a transformation that occurred there. And that was really cool. And I want to be a part of that. So it was those two like kind of really formative things. And then, like I said, I learned from my uncle because he's a patent attorney as well, a little bit, like because of some of the anti-nepotism policies, it meant we've never worked at the same firm. We've never worked together, actually. So it was just kind of funny. So I'd get to hear some of the practice pointers and those kinds of things, but not necessarily working together.
I see. That's super interesting. And I really love how you observe someone, who describes someone that is stoic, then turn into a butterfly. Now that
Right.
transformation is pretty awesome to watch at that.
And it is one of the joys of being a patent attorney is to watch people explain what they've invented. And so I always tell people, I'm like, every invention is somebody's baby, right? And especially in private practice now, sometimes you do have to tell them like, hey, you kind of messed up your baby because you missed a statutory deadline, or your baby's really ugly because there's a bunch of prior art that goes before it, right? Like, so sometimes you have
hard to hard to
it's
actually
really
share
hard to
those
do.
feedback,
Right. It's really hard to do. Those are the hard days. But watching someone describe something that they've dreamt of, and it's never a linear process of invention. Innovation is not a linear process at all. And so when you watch someone describe that journey, how they lived with the idea, how they toyed with the idea, how they tinkered with the idea, how they, renovated it, maybe they pivoted away from a couple of things, all of that is just so fascinating to me. But I have yet, over the course of now almost 30 years of being a patent attorney, I have yet to meet a single inventor who is not passionate about what they've invented. And that passion is, honest to God, it's contagious, right? And I love it.
That's wonderful. What strengths would you say Molly has that actually, don't give me that look. What strengths does Molly have that actually made you very well suited in this IP space and helping inventors to bring their inventions to life?
My dad would say I have a gift of gab. One of my... He's not wrong, right?
He's not wrong.
He's not wrong. I mean, he says other things that are really not great. He describes my driving style as no one has answered yes to the question, but did you die? Yet.
Yet. That's a growth mindset. Carol drag.
Right? There's room for growth there. But no, my dad would say I have the gift of gab. One of my former bosses actually paid me one of the highest compliments, and I don't know that he even knows that I consider it one of the highest compliments. But he said to me, he goes, you have a knack for making the complex understandable and simple for people. And I was like, that is kind of cool, because that's our job, right? Our job as patent attorneys is to tell the story of the invention. What was the problem? How did you solve it? Why didn't any other solutions work before? That's a patent application. And that's the claim. And then describing those metes and bounds. And having had experience in private practice when I started out, litigating and prosecuting, and then moving in-house for the next 15 years of my career, I got good at making kind of the nuances of patent law understandable, which then served me really well when I worked for the government and did, half of my job was education and outreach. So I think that part of it is definitely still a strength. I would say another strength of mine is building people up. I've brought a lot of people along. I've mentored a lot of people. Most interestingly, one of the partners that I work with at Holland Hart was one of my students when I was an adjunct professor.
Ooh, that's so cool.
It's very cool. That part of it, and watching so many of the people that I started out with and that I grew up with in this profession just be so successful is phenomenal as well. So I think I'm also kind of, I don't want to say cheerleader, but I am I'm always in people's corner going, hey, you can do this. This is awesome. So I think that's part of it. And I really am a very good organizer of people and connector, right? I think that's actually one of those personality types in one of the books that I've read. I don't remember, but it is, and it is me to a core, right? So, someone will say, oh, I'll give an example. I was having lunch with a friend and they said, oh yeah, we're kind of moving into this space. And I was like, oh my God, I have the perfect person to introduce you to. So, right, a lot of times for me, it's making those connections that might not otherwise happen. And then you just put people together.
I love it. I think that's is one of the reasons, I was like, who should I invite? And there has been actually, this is my year 4 for Virtual Water Cooler Chat. Jackie Bonola's episode is going to be the 100th.
Wow. She's so phenomenal too. I can't wait to listen to it.
Yeah, well, it's so funny because all of you are super accomplished women. Early on, it's much harder to get people to say yes. Now, I think it's because I have built a brand authority,
You have, yeah.
and a presence, that it's like people kind of know that people trust that this is not a gotcha interview. Like, I don't have anything like that. I only want to build people up, like what you do.
Yeah.
I think leadership is something that I'm super passionate about. Part of it is that really, especially in this particular challenging and world that we live in, if I can help one more person, I would have fulfilled what I am on this earth for. And this seems sort of like not trying to be a saint or anything like that. It's just that when you don't focus so much on yourself, then somehow that service mentality makes everything you do, much more meaningful. And part of it is that I didn't find out about this until so I was a workaholic. I don't know how much you know about me, but I have been a IP paralegal, litigation paralegal all the way, not prosecution, for 20 plus years. And I was at Finnegan. Before that, I was at Howie. For 1 year. And then, well, Howie no longer exists, but there's plenty of alumni everywhere. And prior to that, I was in construction litigation.
Wow.
Litigation all the way. I have never done any patent prosecution. I took one course at the GW paralegal program.
Okay.
And my professor then was an adjunct professor. He was an associate at Morgan Lewis and Bacchius. And before I finished my course, it was an evening program. So before I finished my course, and he asked me, would you be interested in going into IP? Because you did quite well in my class. I'm like, I don't know anything about IP. He was like, do you know anything about construction? I said, not at the beginning. He said, well, yeah, case in point. I guess shows you when you're trying to argue with an attorney. And he was so nice. And then he kind of helped me decide what part of the IPs, there's 4 parts, right? Copyright, patent, trademark, trade secrets. And he was like, I don't think you like trademark that much. And copyright doesn't really bring that much money at the time, right? I mean, just looking at the stuff, you have been in litigation. I think you do really well in patent litigation. He was completely right. And part of it is like, I don't have, you have an engineering degree. I have a liberal art degree. I was in poli-sci and East Asian languages and cultures. How did I survive in this environment all this time? I think one of the strengths I have is stay curious.
Yes.
Like what you don't know, go figure it out. I think people are so afraid to oh God, if I get a rejection, how would that look? Well, who cares? I mean, I think it's easier to say that now when I'm on my own, but I can see how that would be, everybody cares. If you don't get it right, your exhibit has to be on point and all these things. I think that part of the personality that I used to have when I came out to work in the litigation world, I think my personality and strength were suppressed because I got to conform. I have to conform and I have to make sure that rules are followed and everything. So I think that part of my strength was suppressed. And it's not until now that I actually have, and a lot of rejections later. A lot of falling and getting back up.
We would be talking for 24 flippin' hours straight, Ashley, if we talked about all the rejections I've received. Okay. And that would just be the professional ones. We won't even talk about the ones in my personal life, right? No. And I think there's that part of it that I think is really important, and I think the conforming issue is such a huge issue, especially for women, I think. And we drive ourselves so hard to make sure that we fit in.
And we're perfect, but we are not.
Well, because no one is, right?
No.
But I was joking with another friend of mine about wearing heels because she watched me take my heels off after a CLE. And she was just like, you know what? Hey, I made this change in my life and I decided I never have to do that anymore. I'm like, I felt the same way about pantyhose, right? Just stopped wearing them and no one cared. So I wore those constricting, horrible things for so many years.
And that's the norm.
And then I stopped and no one cared, right? Like, and so I do think that there's a lot of that. I will say from a professional standpoint, I was really, really lucky early in my career. So when I first started out in Western New York, after graduating from SUNY Buffalo, I worked for a very small law firm. And I was literally in federal district court 4 months after getting admitted to the bar, trying a case with the partner. And the partner was I believe 6'4", maybe 6'5", former football player, big guy. And he used his voice, he used his physicality, he used, a whole bunch of things that, quite frankly, I can't compete with in the courtroom. And that was who I was learning from. And so in a lot of ways, he was fantastic for me because I had to have my own voice. I couldn't imitate him. I couldn't be him, like in any way, shape, or form. I am 5'1". I mean, the two of us standing next to each other at counsel table had to look like frickin' frack to the judge, right? Like, I mean, we have nothing physicality in common, right? And so I had to learn. I had to learn how to interact with opposing counsel. I had to learn how to talk to witnesses and to interrogate witnesses and all of those other kinds of things. So he taught me things about the law, and he was brilliant for me to learn from. But the biggest thing that he gave me was my own voice.
You have to.
I had to. There was no other choice. And that has served me, I think, really well over the years, too, because I found it so early. I've never really strayed from it. And it's been fantastic. But right, like, it's also been a huge reason why I've had some of the pivots in my career that I have.
Yeah, I was talking to a guest because I'm only 5'2", and so
5'1", babe. You got me.
I was talking to, I will shrink, don't worry. So I was talking to a guest that he is like an IP attorney and he's 6'7". And I said, and he used to be one of the clients that, when I was working in litigation, and he used to be like a VP in litigation at Sony. So I remember him, and he's now a tech entrepreneur. And I am really good about reaching out to people because rejection doesn't really bother me that much anymore.
Yeah.
Like, okay, check off the list. All right. No problem. If it doesn't happen right now, it just means not yet. So some of the people come back and ask me, can I be on your show? I'm like, maybe. Because now I'm really, this month, I have 7 interviews. You're the first. We just finished 7 last month. So all the releases is all the way out to the end of Q2 now, maybe the start of Q3. So I could probably take a vacation at some point.
Vacations are awesome.
Let me ask you the question that you were the director of the Rocky Mountain region of USPTO for almost 10 years, or maybe a little bit over. Tell me about your experience there before we started bringing you back to the private sector.
Phenomenal. I have always said that the best part of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office was the people you got to work with. And I got to work with some phenomenal people.
Yeah, there's some talents there.
Yeah, there were so many pinch me moments that I had over the course of those 10 years. I loved that job. I thought it was one of the best jobs in the IP system. And part of the job was, the education and outreach, and then looping feedback back into the agency and talking with people about, because no organization or agency is perfect. So what can we do better? Which is pretty much how I've always approached people of, explaining, kind of how the agency worked to people. I always used to say that the job was demystifying. So sometimes we were demystifying the intellectual property system for people. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we were demystifying certain aspects of IP for people. And sometimes we were demystifying the agency for people.
A lot of demystification, eh?
Because sometimes, and I'll use one example. I remember walking into a National Docketing Association meeting right after Director Vidal made the change to put the welcome letter to every new inventor that filed a patent application. And so all of these docketing paralegals and professionals are getting all of these welcome letters, and they have no idea what to do with them. No one explained to the paralegals what they meant, why they went in, what was the reasoning behind it. The reasoning behind it was super phenomenal, right? Kathy wanted to make sure that every person who filed a new application felt like they were welcome in the IP system, and to explain things to them so that when they got a rejection, that they didn't feel like it was a rejection of them personally, and that they didn't get discouraged, that they continued on. The purposes were absolutely noble and absolutely phenomenal, but there was a lack of communication with the people who ended up processing these things. There was one paralegal who looked at me and said, I've received over 1,000 of these in the last 3 weeks. What am I supposed to do with them? How do we docket them? What does that look like? How do we pass them along? All of those things. I just kind of sat there like, oh, that was a blind spot. But once they understood why the letters were issued and what they meant, they knew exactly what to do. Mm-hmm. So I always viewed kind of my job as that, giving people that other perspective of basically why the agency did some of the things that it did. So yeah, I loved that part of the job, but I also loved creating a home for all of the examiners and judges and other people who were associated with the Rocky Mountain office. It was no mistake that we called each other family. We really were. Like,
that's why your son has so many aunties.
Yeah, it was part of it too, right? Yeah, it really was just, we had a good time. We created an amazing culture. I miss like every single person that's there. I'm still in touch with a lot of them, but it really was just a really neat culture, and they're still going strong. So, right, like the work-life committee of the Rocky Mountain office is still meeting. The Patent and Trademark Office Society part of the Rocky Mountain office is still meeting. They did their holiday party just a couple months ago, right? And we still get together. They do happy hours, all of those other kinds of things. So some of the culture is still ongoing, which actually warms my heart, even though the office doesn't exist anymore.
Well, you know what? It's good that you have helped build a legacy, and that actually created such a strong bond. So that's really important. And I feel like that the education outreach component to this actually helped you with your current practice at Holland Hart. Tell me a little bit.
It has. It truly has. Maybe it's given me, kind of like that thinking outside the box perspective about garnering clients and building a book of business, because obviously, right, like Holland and Hart took a huge chance in hiring me, coming straight out of the government, no book of business, no nothing, just a whole lot of contacts that I've made over the last 10 years.
Hey, remember our growth mindset yet.
Exactly, right? But, right, like, I mean, law firms are not necessarily known for their growth mindsets, Ashley.
No.
Clear, right?
Scarcity and risk averse is more like it.
Thank you. Exactly. So, Holland and Hart took a risk, and I am eternally grateful that they did. I knew though, and everybody asks, they're like, oh, did you know the office was closing? Or, why did you make the move when you made the move? I will be honest, doing the education and outreach for the agency was phenomenal, and I loved it, but there were lines that we could not cross. We could not give advice to people. We couldn't really make suggestions to people about, like, you might want to consider doing this, right? And I had enough experiences where I'm like, I know exactly what this company needs to do. And then even if you know exactly what the company needs to do, you can't say it and you can't give them advice, and you have to hope that they just take enough away from you to be able to go protect what they need to protect. And then they have to go work with somebody else to get it done. That, I don't know, hands-on part of me is like, oh my God, I was itching. I was itching for probably 2 years before I actually left the government to get back in and be more hands-on with clients and stakeholders, and to be the one doing again, instead of just talking about it. So I had the itch for probably 2 years, but my son was in high school, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I really want to make a move now. And then, I think the new administration came in, and they had a different idea about what education and outreach should be that didn't really mesh well with me. So I was like, okay, maybe now's the time. And my son's going into his senior year next year, so it'll be time. And I will be full on busy when he goes away to college. So I won't be sad.
That's awesome. And then the IP system will benefit from your sage advice and
I
insight.
hope so.
What is one thing that you would encourage leaders to do proactively to lower their IP risk profile? Or maybe 2 or 3.
I was going to say, so I always tell people, like, your intellectual property portfolio and your intellectual property risk isn't like a one and done situation. It really is something that you have to engage with, and it needs to change as you grow, as you scale, as you maneuver through the marketplace. I find so many people who get so offended when a counterfeit product or somebody imitates them in the marketplace or something like that. And so I always go back to, I kind of feel that Shakespeare got it wrong, that imitation is not the sincerest form of flattery, but infringement certainly comes close. So, right, because no one's going to infringe you if you're not doing something great. So, but right, like I know that is maybe a humorous take on something that really costs businesses a lot of money. So I think being proactive about your intellectual property and really being honest about what you can afford, what assets you need, and where you need to go, and being holistic about it, as well as being engaged with it on a regular basis, is probably what I would tell clients about the IP system. What I would also tell attorneys and people who are and professionals that are coming into the system is, I truly believe that we need to look like the people we represent, and we still have a long way to go, right? Like I would encourage people to be really active in the space of mentoring young professionals along. I'm very concerned about where we're going to be in 3 years, just in terms of, what's going to happen to young associates after artificial intelligence kind of really, and as it is right now, like barreling into our profession. So I do think that there's some of that for older, wiser attorneys. It's like, okay, how do we really mentor these young professionals? Because I don't know about anybody else, but I have not seen the demand for intellectual property services go down at any point in my lifetime. It is just ever increasing.
It's actually one of the area that even when other areas of law may go, like, in terms of the demand going down, I think you're absolutely right. Like, for example, it's been 6 years since I started Virtual Pen Gateway, and I don't go out and advertise for my service. So people often wonder, what do you do for money? Because you do your podcast, you write books. At what point do you do work? And I do work, because otherwise I wouldn't be here talking to you.
Exactly.
Right? So it's just that I'm good at what I do. So the time that I do, and I also don't want to do too much because one, it would affect the quality of my work product, and two, it would affect the quality of my life. I was a workaholic pretty much the entire time. My parents, I'm immigrant. Like, that's the immigrant mentality. My parents used to have a Chinese restaurant and we work. And I was like talking to some people. This is one of the reasons why I really love the podcast, because there were so many things that I don't remember. I just remember that I was working. But I didn't remember through the talking. I remember that, even when I was a student, I would write to professors. And I don't write to just any professors. I write to the top school. Like I literally, I was bold and I have no idea why, but so I wrote to professor at Harvard, program on negotiation, because I did my thesis on Chinese and American negotiating styles. And we did a meta-analysis, and it's between quality side and East Asian languages and cultures. I added a little bit of business and communication. I did a simulation. Anything that you would think that the overachiever would do it, I did it. So I wrote to Roger Fisher and William Ury and get them to critique or answer some of my questions. And they both responded to me. And I also wrote Robert Mnookin, so that Harvard program of negotiation, getting to yes, getting past no. I did all of that to ask questions. I was from University of Kansas. So most of the people, when you're from a smaller school, and they was like, oh no, they would never respond to you. But that's not the case actually. Because those educators, they are really seeking knowledge. And if you take the time, the problem is that people are afraid to take that chance because they would think, oh, I don't think that this is going to happen and you're wasting your time. But that's really not the case. So when I tell them, say, hey, look at my letter. I got this from Roger Fisher and William Ury. And they're like, what? And it's just like Seth Godin. And he was such a nice guy. That's one of my, I think, highest views. He's like the marketing guru. He wrote 23 best-selling books. Now, obviously, how do I know Seth? I just follow him. And I write him from time to time. I say, I don't know. And then sometimes I would actually write people when I disagree with them. I would tell them too. So I did that with Adam Grant about personal branding. He was like, I said, I'm going to write an article to rebut this.
I love it.
He goes like, go ahead. And Megan Raymond actually knows Adam Grant, but I just find an email and I just like, write, it was like, I don't like this article that you were talking about because this is not like completely fair to this, blah, 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 blah. I just wrote. And then after that, he was like, well, okay, well, first rating. I stayed in my opinion. I mean, good for you. But I love the fact that he just entertained, the whole process. And then he was like, I asked him, I was like, would you like to be on my podcast? I'm too busy. I cannot do it. I was like, thank you for saying no. Because I know now I am crossing you off my list. I'll just listen to your podcast on your podcast and other people's podcasts. But that's helpful. So
sometimes even the no is helpful.
The
right?
no is especially helpful, actually, I feel.
One of the other things that I loved about the agency was its education of its leaders. When you don't have the ability to maneuver people's wages, when you don't have the ability to maneuver time off, when really everything is so prescribed about their jobs, how do you motivate people to go above and beyond for you? And the only way, honestly, that you can do that is if you're a leader that they trust and you give them an idea that they can get behind. And so the agency spent a ton of time educating its leaders about how to put the people of the IP system, especially of the USPTO, first. And that was really kind of an amazing thing. But there was one gentleman that we used to, every idea that we came up with was no. It was rejected right out of hand. I would always look at him and I'm like, is that a no? Or is that a no, not now? And he would look at me and he'd be like, and I got him to move to no, not now quite a bit. And then I was like, you do realize I'm writing this down and the not now.
Yeah, I'll come back later.
I'm coming back. Right? I am nothing if not persistent. So anyway, but it was all of those things that just kind of, and then truly though, even though he would say no, if you could convince him that it was the right thing to do, especially for the USPTO's people, he would say yes. You could get him to yes. And so
getting to yes.
Yeah, it is getting to yes, right? Like, what does it take to get to yes? So I thought that was one of the most phenomenal things about the agency. And I mean, I'll be honest, right? I think it is one of the things that is not happening right now.
Yeah, so last week I had one of my former UPG lit assistant. She's now 1L at Southwestern
very cool.
At law school. So I have a group of LA young women that has basically referred to each other, and then they're now all except one all alumni now. So I got this text while I was in California that, oh, actually, I'm on spring break next week. Do you think we could talk? I'm like looking at my calendar, where do I have the whole day? And then I was like, okay, well, we'll do like 4 to 5, and then we talk. And then I have to cut other meetings short so that I could accommodate this. And I wasn't sure exactly. Actually, I have an inkling about why she wants to talk to me, but I wasn't 100% sure. So she was like, oh, I just wanted to catch up, this and that. And I was like, okay, so, 10 minutes in. And I'm like, now do you want to tell me what is the real purpose of this call? Enough chit chat.
Yeah.
And I said, no.
People have to warm up a little, Ashley.
Yes, I know. I don't know if you get this, but I'm pretty candid. And then so I was like, here's the thing. I think we've known each other long enough that you could just tell me the purpose of this call and we could have chit chat and reverse that order. I would appreciate that more because that's just being upfront. So then she told me what she was up to. So I gave her some advice and then this and that. And then I started thinking about who to connect her with. And so that was really amazing because I had another one of her friends. And so how she did it is she texted me and said that I need to have a strategy meeting. I was like, okay. She was very upfront from the beginning. And then so we had a meeting and she was asking me, she's always very prepared, this other woman, very prepared. And then so she was talking to me about I'm in 1L, I need to start looking for summer associate position, but there's not that much opportunity right now. What do you think I need to do? I said, let's open your LinkedIn. I actually do that with them, with my team from time to time. And they are over 500 plus. The LA girls are actually doing pretty good right now. And then whenever they need some additional people, they will call on me and say, who should I connect with? And I was like, okay, here's a list of the people that you should connect with. That's mentoring. The other young woman, she had actually posted something and said that she got a summer associate position at a large firm. So I said to her, I said that, so-and-so is also at that firm, and you should actually ask her how they should get in and get connected. So the good things that I really do think, while it's really hard I agree with you that the upcoming years are challenging, but I think that without risk, there will be no opportunity.
Exactly.
So looking at the silver lining, and the thing is, when other people are fearful of risking and you move forward, I think that really differentiate you to people at the top level. And this is what I believe in, but one of my guests actually put it the best. He used the word cooperation. Basically, cooperate at the bottom level and compete at the top. I'll credit that to Jamie Siegel. So that was really, really helpful. I mean, even though it was like a lot of hard work, I have some of my team to help me with, I was like, can you please, here's the bio of the guest, can you come up with some questions? Most of the times I don't have the time to review because I don't want to script. So most of the time I was just like, oh, here's the primary questions. Early on, I am like, if you see some of my early interviews, I have actually used the word suck to describe myself. But hey, I have embraced the suck for a while now. Also really important now that I'm comfortable enough and not focus so much on image. I mean, obviously you want to look professional and you want to do things, but it's not like so self-conscious that I cannot focus on the content. One of the things that Seth Golden had actually done so much in terms, because I was freaking out when I was interviewing him. He does not want any questions ahead. He was like, I'm not going to listen to it. I'm not going to review it, so don't send me anything. Of course, I will still send him something. And he was like, as I stated before, I will not need questions. Now, I come from the legal space, and that's not what we do. Everything is prep, right? Litigation, prep. That was my first of the season 4 first episode this year, when and he didn't want Zoom. He wants another system. He said that I do not like Zoom. I like blah, blah, blah. So I had to research and got that in and then got on there. But that was the first time I used it. I mean, I tested it, but the time that I got it, my computer was making some crazy sound. And he was like, Ashley, there's some background noise. I'm like, I don't know how to fix this. And he was like, let me use Claude.ai and figure it out. And he was like, oh, there's a remove background noise that you could do, blah, blah, blah. And I listened to it. And at the end of it, it was like, there's some words that I said, I mean, English is not my first language. Basically, talking to a legend in marketing, right? That's intimidating enough. And I'm trying to like formulate enough, not even perfect English, just, decent and acceptable. And then there were like a couple of things that I said, and he didn't like the word. And he was like, I said, oh yeah, it was a miracle that I sort of like wrote a book. He's like, it was not a miracle. So I used a couple more words that were not right. And then he said that it was unexpected. So that was actually one of my best session in terms of like letting me know that, hey, talk to Seth. He gave me some really, really good advice. And we were just talking about on demand and things like that. True educator, because he was like taking the time and he knew that it would benefit me and the podcast because just putting his name there. I just have so many amazing people also in the IP system there. So yourself included. And I just want to thank you for everything that you have done to contribute to the education, leadership in this particular space. Now, do you have any closing words?
So I'll just say, Ashley, because I, like you, have kind of that servant mindset. And I always find that I am happiest when I'm putting myself aside and serving others. But when I come back to that and I look at it, I often get so much more out of serving others. I've learned so much from people that ostensibly, right, I'm serving them, but they're teaching me. And I find that to be some of the places where I've learned the most and I've gotten the most kind of rich experiences from those kinds of things. And I think that we need more of that in the profession. I like hearing that you are exactly like me in that sense. But no, I mean, I've loved every role I've had in the IP system. I think it's phenomenal. I'm fully cognizant that America is probably the only place that I get to be me and do what I do. And I love this country for that. I love our intellectual property system. I can truly say, right, I know that it sounds practiced, but it's not. It's really sincere. It was the honor of my life to work for the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. It was a phenomenal experience. I love that agency. I love the work that they do, and I love how they propel America forward in every single aspect. When you look at our country from the time we were formed, the patent system has always been there. And it is truly what our founding fathers thought, which was that the ingenuity and innovative nature of Americans was going to make this country great. And I think it's still true. I love being an IP lawyer.
Well, it shows.
It's so weird to say, though. And it's so funny when you meet someone else, because, when you meet someone for the first time, and most people, like if I meet them on a plane or on a train or somewhere, and they're like, how are you a lawyer? Aren't you supposed to be meaner? And I'm like, no, I'm one of the cool lawyers. I help people build things.
That's awesome. That's a great bio to have, right?
And it is. It's true. I mean, as IP lawyers, we get to help people build their dreams. And that's phenomenally cool.
Well, thank you so much, Molly.
It was so good to talk to you.